Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for your in-depth weekly astrology forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June. I'm going to share with you shortly the event chart for the week and go through what is going to be a very powerful, even dynamic 7 days. But please stay with me. I will share each of the 12 zodiac signs, event charts, and explore what's in store for them too, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun, or the moon. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have your company. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. For returning visitors, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it grow and click that sub button now. And also the bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you should get an alert. If you'd like to get your free written daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the subscription link below. I also provide the key astrological influence for each day, so we can see the big picture as well as enjoy the horoscope forecast for our ascendant, sun, or the moon. And also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consultant astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below. Explore what people have said about working with me. If you're a Patreon, thank you so much for your support. I do share a lot of additional information with Patreons. Check out what's there by becoming a patron from $3 a month. If you're familiar with your tropical natal horoscope, why not check out my Draconic package below? Draconic is based on our soul or karmic energy that we bring into this world. It's the roots of our being. Our natal tropical chart is the outcome of that journey. If you're exploring astrology and finding your feet and learning more, check out my natal life roadmap report and also 12 months transit report. They're 30% off both these packages. Please see below for more. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. The big takeout, the moon in Aries, side by side with Mars, the ruler of that sign. If you're someone who tends to go to bed late in the evening or early in the morning, you may find it a little bit difficult to get to sleep because this is a very vibrant, restless combination, but certainly can give us an excess of energy. However, if you have got some key things you want to achieve this week, that combination will certainly rev you up. Now, Mercury went through the sign of Aries for 9.5 weeks. Some ideas may have been off and on, but over the last couple of weeks, as Mercury has made its way through the grounded and earthy Taurus, hopefully things have gained traction. And of course, Mercury also combined last week with Uranus, a very electric influence, but that may have invested some more innovation into that plan that's been developing. But as this week begins, Mercury's on the cusp of entering Gemini later on Monday. But before it says goodbye, it's in a great angle with Neptune. So the suggestion here is keep listening to our guts and our sixth senses when it comes to practical ideas. But Monday, what a sensational day. Mercury arrives back in Gemini, one of its two home signs. What we're going to see very, very quickly is a speeding up of thought and action and communications, but also a sharpening up of the way we interact with one another. Mercury obviously feels very at home here. It also links almost straight away with Jupiter, the planet of expansion and good fortune. If you are someone who works in business, particularly technology, this is a fantastic combination. Both are arcing back to Pluto in Aquarius, particularly Jupiter exactly on Monday. A combination that hasn't happened across these two signs for over 220 years, as you may have heard me share recently. So if there's something you want to express with conviction and you need to be persuasive, and it's a big picture project, and it is about how we're all connected, then this is a fantastic platform to shine. But also Mercury combining with Jupiter can be very lucky if you want to buy some new tech. You could get a good deal. You could have a chat with someone completely unexpectedly, and there could be a real spark. But on Tuesday, Venus aligns with the Sun exactly in a Cazimi. The energy of the Sun, the radiance of the Sun, amplifies the energy of Venus. Venus in Gemini is quite flirty and flexible. It's a mutable sign, of course it's about chatting, and Venus can be very alluring and very much to do with how we interact in terms of our style. So whether it's our personal presentation or the words we use, Venus adds more luster, and with that Cazimi, that's increased. So a key moment in this quite critical week. But by Thursday we have the new moon. Venus still in the mix. The Gemini new moon sees the moon in an air sign. The moon is obviously the ruler of Cancer, a water sign. So here the moon's a bit more detached. It's not quite so inclined to say how it feels, but the Sun unifying with the moon does give us an opportunity to balance the thrust of the Sun and the feeling of the moon around our personal expression. Having Venus there just adds that much extra magic. So very important conversations can occur this week. If you get chatting to someone and the sparks really arc between you, it could prove to be something really, really interesting and very engaging, even exciting. But it's also true to say that a new moon's energy lasts for 1 month, and there is a bit of a gotcha on this particular new moon, because on the face of it, it looks absolutely amazing. But because Saturn in the sign of Pisces, a water sign, and Saturn can be about limitation, but it also in the 12th house is in a tense square with the new moon and also Venus. So there could be a revelation. So those quick conversations could see something spill out into the open, which may actually be rather awkward. Now, in terms of a public figure, it could be something comes into the open that they'd rather keep out of the public domain. But in terms of our own personal situations, someone could challenge us quite unexpectedly. So we may feel that we're being, perfectly pleasant, and someone will come along and make a very telling and acerbic point, which could be quite wounding, and it could be linked to a past issue that isn't resolved, and maybe they've been harbouring a grudge. So having Saturn in house 12, in traditional astrology, secret enemies, clashing with this bright, breezy and potentially frivolous selection of energy in Gemini means that as much as we can relate, we need to relate with meaning. In other words, with sincerity. Otherwise, we could get caught out. But by Sunday, Mars speeds up and leaves the sign of Aries. Remember, at the start of this week, it was in that combination with the moon. It ends the week going into Taurus, where it's going to be for 6 weeks. Mars in Taurus is very much wanting to see material results for our hard work. Mars can be about passion, it can be about action, of course it can be about instant gratification. So we're going to want to enjoy the good things over the following 6 weeks. But if we have been working very, very hard on a business idea, for example, or to marshal our personal finances more carefully, we're going to want to see an uplift, and we're going to be determined to achieve it. It's going to go on right through to the 21st of July. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, from Aries through to Pisces, in terms of your ascendant, the sun or the moon. But please, like, comment, share or subscribe. Welcome Aries to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. As ever, we need to focus on your ruler. Your ruler is coming to the end of its journey in your sign, which began 5 weeks ago. But if you recall, Mercury, the planet of communication, was in your sign for 9.5 weeks. And Mercury's also going to be moving signs this week. So it's all change in the heavens. But as the week begins, the moon is also in Aries and very close to Mars. You could find yourself quite restless, therefore, as the week begins, but restless to achieve things. And that could bring out the more impatient side of your nature, but that's not a bad thing, particularly if you've got a goal that you want to see through. Your sense of urgency can really give you a sense of purpose. But also, as the week begins, Mercury, which I mentioned before, which has been just moving through the earthy Taurus recently, is angling to Neptune. Don't underestimate, when it comes to marshalling your resources, past skills and experiences. They are very important to the decisions you make at this time. But if you're having a discussion later on Monday, it could prove to be a very seminal time for you, because Mercury moves into Gemini, which it rules, but also links to Jupiter. This combination can be very fortunate, particularly if you work in business, or you're a trader of some kind, or you want to sell some stuff that you've got surplus at home. You could really have a stroke of good luck. But also, both are linking back to Pluto, and Pluto retains its location in the part of your situation to do with your future plans. So there could be a lot of discussions about those plans, but particularly if you need to collaborate with others. Now, as the day goes on, Jupiter's link to Pluto becomes exact. The first time in these two signs for 220 years. If you really feel very sure of what you want to say, the chances are that you can get your ideas across with a great deal of conviction. But also, by Tuesday, Venus, the planet of charm, links up with the Sun in an exact conjunction known as a cazimi. So Venus is in the heart of the Sun, which amplifies Venus's energy. So your playfulness and quick wits, but also the way you express yourself tonally or in terms of writing, can be important. It can steer things in your favour if you choose your words carefully. But if there's someone you're chatting to, there's every chance you can make a very good impression. If you're using internet dating, this could be a really important week, to be honest. But by Thursday, we have the new moon. New moons are an opportunity to set our intentions for the following month. For you, the pace of life is going to be helter-skelter. But if you can just pause every time you're about to discuss something or send an email or text message, and just make sure that you're going to choose the best phrases and the best words possible, it could be very helpful to your cause. But unfortunately, Saturn, the planet of limitation, is in a clash with that new moon and also Venus. And if a relationship isn't going so well, it could be something from the past that can come back into the open. And however much you might try and talk it through, it may be that the other person is quite resistant to what you're saying. Conversely, it could be you that's highlighting a past grievance and wanting to discuss it, and you may be up for being diplomatic about it, and if the other person is open to having this chat, all well and good. But if they're not, that can create a issue. Now, Mars moves out of your sign as the week draws to a close and punches into Taurus. In a way, Taurus anchors Mars. Mars is a very go-getting influence, certainly gives you your desire to take action. Here in Taurus, it can slow you down a bit, but it's not going to dim your determination. It's just going to direct it in a different way. So if you have been very creative or starting something new, now you want to see results. And you're definitely going to want to see an improvement in your finances. And a lot of grit can be there to support you achieve some kind of shift in your favour. But discussions and conversations are definitely the big part of this week. And if used right, and if you say exactly what you mean, and people see you as being very sincere, this could be a week when you make some stunning connections and alliances. But it is important to make sure that any past issues are really cleared up, particularly when it comes to a past relationship. Maybe, for example, there's someone that you're really drawn to and the hurt from a past separation is still playing out in your psychology and could be a barrier to you opening up and really enjoying being in the here and now. So just be mindful of that too. Have a great week, Aries, and please do subscribe to the channel and help it grow. Welcome, Taurus, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. We need to be mindful of your ruler, the gorgeous Venus, and that's very close to the Sun as we start this week. And what a week it can be, particularly for you. It starts, however, with the position of the Moon and Mars so close together, you could feel a little bit on edge as you come into Monday, but things will soon pick up for you as the Moon moves into your sign. Now we're going to see a transition between Mercury in Taurus into its home sign of Gemini. But think what you've achieved over the last couple of weeks. The chances are, Taurus, you've primed up some things that maybe had felt like they were stalling for quite some weeks because of Mercury's long journey through your 12th house, 9.5 weeks. Psychologically, it may have been a little bit of a tough time, but you're coming into your own, and Mercury forges a brief but powerful link to Neptune, and suggesting that a connection to someone else can be cheering you on. But this is a week when you can appreciate the parts of your situation which are very much to do with Earth. How's that with all this energy in Gemini? Well, it's true that the host of Mercury from Monday, which joins with Jupiter, a very fortunate combination, and both link back to the powerful Pluto in your 10th house of work and how you link to the wider world. But there's the clue. There could be something to do with your resources that's going to take a step forwards in a really pleasing way. But it all depends on the background preparation you've been doing, because Saturn has been asking some really difficult questions over the last year or more, and you may have come to the view that certain people were not as worthy of you as you had previously thought. So there may have been some changes around your connections, network and friendships, and there could still be further questions to ask this week, to be honest. But if you really have been putting the effort in, Saturn being in your sector of the future, the chances are you can start to reap the benefits of a lot of grit and a lot of application that you've been applying for quite some time. Because the combination of Mercury and Jupiter on Monday can truly be very beneficial. If you are someone who's buying or selling something, this is a very good portent, no doubt about it. And then on Tuesday, Venus links exactly with the Sun in a cazimi. Now this energy, if you like, is radiating the core vibe of Venus for a year, for you personally. And I feel therefore that finances can pick up for you over the next 12 months. It may not be immediately obvious because with Jupiter in your second solar house, it's all about application, going through the processes in a very consistent way. And Jupiter sometimes can see us a little bit bored with the details. We're much more interested in the plan than actually getting stuck in. But if you're prepared to roll up your sleeves with the help of this Venus cazimi in your second house, the way you think about resources or you discuss resources or the way you share information or gain extra knowledge about marshalling your resources, you will see a much improved outcome over this next year ahead. Now that brings us to the new moon on Thursday. And that's what I was hinting about friends, because if there are some people who don't align to your values, you're going to find out on this particular new moon. This new moon is asking you to think about your values and your self-worth as much as your money. And whilst Venus can bring some fortune to the equation, Venus is also about relating. The people you can relate to in a way which feels solid and real. And you know you can absolutely rely upon them those are the people that you need to be collaborating with at this time. So if there are some other people that you're not sure of, I feel this new moon will reveal those players. Because over the last 6 weeks, which will become much more obvious by the end of this week, I feel your emotions have been up and down at times. As Mars storms into your sign for a 6-week stay through to the 21st of July, that's going to bring you very much into the moment. And some of the anxieties or mood changes that have been prevalent in recent weeks can just fade away. So I feel that this is a week when a lot of clarity can start to shape up for you. Yes, you can enjoy the things that are really important to Taurus, whether it's a bit of luxury, some lovely food, being in nature, being very sensual in your approach. All those things can call out to you. But I feel essentially it's your values that you're wanting to feel are being enhanced, and you're being true to yourself, and the people around you are energetically right for you. And that's essentially the springboard from all this Gemini energy. I hope you have a great week, Taurus, and if you've yet to subscribe, please do so now. Welcome, Gemini, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now is the event chart for you for the start of the week. This gives us some very important pointers, not least your ruler Mercury. It's at 29 degrees and 22 minutes at midnight on Monday, and is set to move into Gemini later on in the day. But last week it was in an exact conjunction with Uranus in your 12th house. You may have found, despite the arrival of Jupiter, the Sun and Venus in your sign, giving you a lot of extra vitality, that something was still proven to be a little bit agitating and affecting your peace of mind. Perhaps it was your sleep that had some very intrusive dreams, or you've just felt somewhat edgy, or maybe a psychological concern or anxiety was just weighing on your mind. But as Mercury switches back into Gemini, you're going to feel sharper, you're going to feel much more in the moment. Now, whether it's around a personal hobby, your interest, your social life, or your work, your creativity and personality power is really going to skyrocket this week, which gives you enormous opportunities. Because as Mercury arrives back in Gemini, it's very close to Jupiter, the planet of fortune, but also the planet of expansion, back in your sign, remember, for the first time in 12 years. Also, Jupiter has been building up in its alliance with Pluto over the last week, and that becomes exact on Monday. As I've mentioned before, for the first time in these two signs for 220 years. Now, Pluto's in a part of your situation to do with widening your horizons, downloading more knowledge, travel, anything to do with history, genealogy even, but most of all, just bringing a greater sense of variety and spontaneity to your existence. But of course, Pluto can deconstruct some parts of our life as well as reconstruct. But that link with Jupiter suggests if you show self-confidence in what's individual to you, Jupiter, and Mercury and Jupiter together on Monday, the two planets of trade, commerce, that combination in itself can be very fortunate. You could take a giant step forwards this week, particularly if you are quite artistic and have a lot of flair, because on Tuesday, Venus moves forward and applies to the Sun, an exact conjunction known as a cazimi. This amplifies the magic of Venus. And remember, Venus is about allure, it's about attracting goodness to us. Don't be surprised if someone is very drawn to you this week, but even if it doesn't happen this week, it could happen over the next year. So if you're looking for a new start in a relationship, this is a very positive portent. Then on Thursday, the new moon in your sign, a once a year event, a great opportunity to set our intentions. When it's in our own sign, we have to be single-minded. But Venus is so close to the location of the Sun and the Moon, which are unified, it's really saying to you, Have self-belief in your ability to draw things to you, to emanate an energy which other people find utterly mesmeric. But also, Saturn, the planet of limitation, squares up to this exquisite combination. So just be aware that there could be someone in a professional situation particularly, or perhaps a parent or someone who tends to be a little bit of a killjoy, who may only be too happy to find a fault in a plan that you're developing. But if you prepare yourself for this and anticipate the type of questions or objections they may have, you can overcome their opposition. But it is important to understand that if a situation isn't going quite as quickly or as well as you would like, it may be because you're wanting to create a version of your reality that doesn't fit into someone else's expectations. And whether it is a line manager or a parent, it may be something you do need to anticipate. But by Sunday, Mars moves out of its 6 weeks passage through the friendliest and most sociable part of your situation into house 12. Through to the 21st of July, your moods could, despite this glorious combination of energy in your sign, could be a little up and down. It just depends on your history, to be honest. If there are some old, rather painful memories that have lain dormant deep within you, they could get activated by Mars in the 12th house. But obviously Mars in Taurus is looking for value, because the sign of Taurus is about value and about money, and maybe something that you've done in the past can come back to you in a very helpful way over this 6-week period. It could even be an old contact, an old colleague, and you can reignite the collaboration between you. But most of all, Mars in the 12th house can just stir up some sediment around past hurts and upsets that we may have thought we've dealt with, and can still be a little bit more active than we might believe. So just be aware of that. But overwhelmingly, this can be a time when you can set your intentions to demonstrate just how dazzling, an individual, creative, imaginative, but most of all, absolutely gorgeous that you can be. It's been a great pleasure being with you, Gemini. Have a lovely week, and if you've yet to subscribe, please help the channel to grow and do so now. Welcome, Cancer, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart at the start of the week, which does provide some important pointers, not least your ruler, the moon, is very close to the feisty energies of Mars. So as you come into this week, your ambitions can be boosted by that combination. But Mars is going to be moving at the end of this week into the sign of Taurus, which can slow it down a little bit. But also Taurus is very much about being very thorough, and it's going to give you a greater awareness of your connections to others. So your drive linked into your network can really work wonders. But you know, Mercury, the planet of communication, has seen some exciting exchanges over the last week, but it moves as this week begins into house 12. Now Mercury governs the sign of Gemini, so perfectly happy being in Gemini, but for you this can trigger a more psychological phase of the year, which is going to last until Mercury and Venus move into your sign on the 17th of June. So you've got a couple of weeks ahead when you may feel that you want to throttle back a little bit. And the new moon, which occurs this week, is also in house 12. Now, house 12 is where we reflect. It's also about the natural part of the sun's progress where we're coming to an end of its journey. So you can look back over the previous year on the back of this new moon and just think about all the developments, all the things that you've learned, particularly in terms of your psychological and emotional understandings. But there are some links this week which are really significant. On Monday, Mercury with Jupiter. It's possible that someone from your past, or a plan or an experience from your past that you had parked can come back into play and actually be very important. Also, Venus meets with the Sun on Tuesday. This can make you hugely nostalgic for someone from your past. You may even get out some old photograph albums or some digital albums and really think about the connection you had to that person. It may be someone who's no longer in this life, and you could feel very sentimental. But equally, as we have the new moon on Thursday, Saturn, the planet of reality in your sector of truth, forges a very brutal right angle to that new moon. Now, the new moon is very gentle and beguiling because Venus is so close to it, and your sensitivities can be very strong. And if there is something you're unsure of around any relationship, professionally, around a friendship or a personal tie, what can happen is the 9th house, where Saturn is, can amplify. Now, we know that Saturn's usually about contraction, but the 9th house can amplify. So it amplifies Saturn's tendency to nitpick. And the 9th house is about higher truths. So either you can see a relationship in a cooler light, or someone can see a connection to you in a cooler light. And the 12th house can be about secret enemies in traditional astrology. So you may find out this week or over the next couple of weeks about who you can really rely upon, and there could be a separation if a tie isn't as strong as you thought it was. And of course, when we go through transitions like that, it can be very, very painful. But do remember, as a water sign, it's important for you to have those moments of reflection and just work out how things are and let things percolate through your being. And I think that's what you're going to do on the back of this week's energies. But equally, the 12th house can be when we start to forge a new connection to someone, but not necessarily in a very open way. So watch out for someone's body language, for example. They may not tell you that they're drawn to you, but they could be. Or is there a past relationship that you're still hankering for a connection around? All those strands are possible, but when Mars moves into your 11th house on Sunday, which is very much about the network, it's very much about your friendships, but it's also about your long-term future. I think you're going to be guided by staying in touch with your senses. The more psychological dimension of life is very, very important. You're not going to ignore that, but Mars is also saying if there are elements of your situation that you're much more sure of at the present time, you can take action as this week draws to a close. It's been a pleasure being with you, Cancer. I hope you have a great week, and if you've yet to do so, please sub and help the channel grow. Welcome, Leo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Your ruler, the Sun, is going to be blessed by the beautiful energies of Venus on Tuesday. This cazimi really can amplify the magic of Venus, which is alluring and attracting. The 11th house, where it occurs, can be very sociable. That sociable potential is boosted by the arrival of Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, back into the sign on Monday. That too joins with Jupiter, a very fortunate combination. If you are working in a collaborative way or a cooperative way with others, whether it's around some kind of local project, an interest you have, or it is around your professional involvements, that can be a great way to build up important connections. But socially, the next month can really sparkle for you as well. You're going to find that your natural ability to get on with people is really going to take on an extra dimension. And all of this will be boosted furthermore by the new moon on Thursday, because Venus is only 31 minutes away from that conjunction of the Sun and the Moon, which is also asking you to think in terms of your future or your highest hopes, to be a little bit more idealistic in your approach. Venus, because it can attract, but it also can be very generous, particularly Venus and the Moon together. Is there somebody in your circle that you can forge an even closer alliance with? It's possible, could be a colleague, maybe a friend. It's also possible that someone you know or know through a friend of a friend could be interested in you from a romantic potential. But in terms of romance, it's all about the long term, because Saturn does create quite a tense right angle to the new moon in house 8. House 8 is very much where we're invested, financially or emotionally. If you're in a relationship which you don't really see as being for the long term, you may decide to leave it over the following month. But the converse can be true. If you see someone there that you feel will be a very solid alliance and match your commitment and even have similar financial values, then this could be the beginning of a beautiful story. But as the week draws to a close, Mars catapults itself right to the top of your chart, the 10th house. When Mars is in the 10th house, it gives us a lot more self-assurance, a lot more self-confidence. It also gives us a lot more raw ambition. Because the energy in Gemini is essentially quite idealistic, the move of Mars into Taurus is much more in the real world. But the combination together, very much a case of who as much as what you know, or where your people skills can become so important, particularly if you're a creative person. Feel you're poised to catapult forwards in the most dynamic and magical of ways possible. Welcome Virgo to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now is your event chart at the start of the week, which provides a backdrop. And we need to be mindful of your ruler Mercury, because Mercury is going to be ascending on Monday into your 10th house, joining with Jupiter. This combination can be very positive and dynamic. If you're attending an interview, doing a presentation, preparing your curriculum vitae, trying to shift the way you connect to the wider world, this week can be very influential in that process. Also, the planets recently have been pushing you, even cajoling you to change things up, to take a more varied approach to situations, but also break free of where you feel limited. And sometimes that means moving away from what feels safe and familiar. But often you are the person who works very, very hard, the glue in any team or family situation, the person who makes sure that all the practical elements are applied. But sometimes it is important to recognise our talents, our leadership skills, but also our personal goals. And whatever yours are, this is the week for you to showcase them. Because that combination between Mercury and Jupiter on Monday is also blessed with the power of Pluto, the planet of transformation. This is a very rare alliance indeed. It hasn't happened in this exact alliance in these planets for 220 years. And because you can often be welded to routines, Pluto's actually pushing you to think about whether some of those are actually as good for you as you might believe. So being very open to new possibilities, perhaps to take on more responsibility, show your leadership talents, or showcase your creative abilities is what this week is principally about. But it is going to be important to understand how relationships can be important to progress, because Venus is in your 10th house, and your ability to get on with different types of people is really going to be helped by her presence. And on Tuesday, she links in a beautiful conjunction with the sun. So this helps you to elevate your talents and your profile in a graceful way, not in a forceful way. But Mercury, your ruler, gives you the articulation. Gemini is obviously about talking and discussion and ideas, but also Mercury moving across your 10th house could see you thinking about a complete change. And if you are working in an environment which is no longer particularly pleasing or nurturing, it may require some reskilling or learning some new approaches, perhaps adapting what you know already and applying it in a fresh way. So be very open about how you can raise your profile. Thursday's new moon is another opportunity to springboard your presence, make other people much more conscious of what you have to offer. What's not to like? Well, it's just, Virgo, that Saturn in your sector of relating on Thursday squares up with that glorious new moon. And whether it's your own personal shyness or reticence to reach out to people, or whether it's someone that you're close to not being very keen for you to make a change in what you're doing, that Saturn influence can be strong. But then on Sunday, Mars reminds you of what Uranus and Mercury have been urging you to do recently, to be more provocative in your approach by bursting into Taurus and saying, look, sometimes we do have to be more risk-taking. So Mars moving into the 9th house is much more adventurous, independent-minded and daring. So even if you have second thoughts about some kind of shift that's going on, or taking on a new, more responsible position, or starting your own business, a lot of celestial wind is going to support you and urge you forwards as this week draws to a close. Have a great week, and if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please help it grow and do so now. Welcome Libra to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now is your event chart at the start of the week, which provides some very important pointers, not least the location of your ruler Venus. Venus is going to join up with the sun on Tuesday in a Cazimi, which is going to explode so much radiance into the natural qualities of Venus in house 9, which really is going to give you a lot of desire, which is Venus is of a quality apart from relating, your desire to expand your horizons. If you've yet to book a holiday or a vacation, the chances are you will over the next month. And it's important to understand that Venus is going to be influential in this week's new moon as well. So anything to do with creating greater variety and spontaneity in your world, and the conversations around that are going to bring you to life, make you feel excited. And what helps the process is that Mercury, the planet which governs Gemini, moves into the sign on Monday and merges with the planet of fortune, Jupiter, which in turn is forging a once-in-a-lifetime link to Pluto in your sister air sign of Aquarius. A lot of air energy, so that's a lot about thinking, talking, interacting, sharing ideas. But if you are in a relationship which is not working so well for you, what does this week hold? Well, I feel the 9th house can be about where we seek the higher truth of a situation. And because your natural way is often to be quite diplomatic in your approach, you can still use that quality to tease into the open how someone feels. And it doesn't have to necessarily be only in a romantic relationship. It could be around a professional one, because by Thursday, the new moon squares up to Saturn. Saturn in your sector of obligations, of work, of limitations when it comes to your physical vitality. And if you have been feeling a little bit run down at times over the last 12 months, not really a surprise. So one of the things you may be seeking to do with this week's events is liberate yourself from something that's become too heavy, too demanding and too draining, but also where all the input that you've invested is not really giving you much sense of appreciation. So you could find yourself being a bit more rebellious, and that may mean leaving something that doesn't seem to give you much option to be a free spirit. So the ninth house is where we can be independent. It can be about where we can be adventurous. Just because Venus is in there doesn't mean to say that this week's events are going to feature on a romantic relationship. And Venus is also about money. So it could be that you're thinking about money in terms of a foreign property or shares in a foreign company. So do think outside the box. That's the big theme of this week for you. But most of all, to use your skillful relating abilities in a way which can tease into the open what's best for all concerned. But I definitely think that Saturn is something that you need to be mindful of. It's great to be dedicated. Neptune has been in your 6th house since 2012, and I feel that you've really poured a lot of effort into being very dedicated, reliable, very sincere, and a person who's really been a stalwart. But sometimes it can get to the point where we can't really pour from an empty jar, and I feel that you're really in the mood for some kind of change, some kind of big shift, and most of all to just feel freer. So feeling freer around a relationship doesn't necessarily mean not being in the relationship. It means pursuing your own interests, which can create oxygen in the relationship, especially with all this air. If you are single and you'd like to meet someone, getting out and about and interacting with people through different groups or interests or higher education can be a very smart way to activate more spark and stimulation in your world. But I really feel generally that this is a week to use your diplomacy, but to find a way to live your life much more on your terms and just create a lot more sense of freedom. And then as the week draws to a close, Mars moves out of your 7th house, where it's been urging you to set your boundaries, and moves into house 8. If there is someone that you're finding to be very enticing and very fascinating, and you're really enjoying being with them, things can get seriously steamy in the following 6 weeks. It's been a pleasure being with you, Libra. Have a great week. And if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now to help it grow. Welcome Scorpio to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now is the event chart at the start of the week. We need to look at the role of your 2 rulers of Mars and Pluto. Now if you recall, Jupiter moved at the end of the week before last into the sign of Gemini. It has been in touch with your modern ruler Pluto since then within 3 degrees, so it has been influential, but they come into an exact trine on Monday, so that's really key, particularly if you're wanting to do something around a property matter, whether it is to do with a renovation, a refit, a redecoration or moving altogether. Jupiter in the 8th house can be where you're talking to bankers, any kind of mortgage facility, or perhaps a landlord in terms of a rental. So some kind of transformation can take shape in a dynamic way on Monday from that combination. But also Mars, you can see, is very close to the Moon as the week starts in your 6th house, which could give you a surfeit of physical vitality, but you can use that well. Mars is actually going to be moving by the end of this week into your 7th house, where it will be through to the 21st of July. Great for relationships, particularly if you're not in one and you want to be more proactive. But also on Monday, Mercury moves out of the part of your scope that is to do with relationships and into house 8 and joins up with, you've guessed, Jupiter, and itself angles to Pluto too. So a discussion, especially around a contract or a funding matter, could come sharply into focus. If you are putting in place things like pensions or investments, or perhaps even life insurances, this would be a very opportune time to think about those particular areas. But by Tuesday, you could have some genuine fortune as Venus combines with the Sun. Or is it somebody close to you that's going to have a slice of luck? But certainly it will be good for you. It could be a business partner. It could be someone in your family. If you are really invested in a particularly close relationship and it's going well, it can get closer this week. But unfortunately, the converse can be true, because by Thursday's new moon, the square to Saturn is going to be telling. Saturn's in the part of your scope to do with joy and also romance. If a relationship has been bumping along the bottom over the last year, the 8th house can be where things make way, as much as where we invest and get more devoted. So it is a kind of pivot point, and it does have two ends of that spectrum. And if you aren't sure, if you don't feel the vibe, if you're not feeling that someone has the same kind of energy and aura that you're really looking for, Saturn's pushing you to ask some serious questions. And because Mars is moving into your sector of relating as the week draws to a close, it could give you the confidence to move away from something that's not working. But again, it doesn't have to be a romance. It could be who you bank with. It could be a business situation where you're going to find yourself being a bit more robust over the following 6 weeks. But this is a week of transformations, but those transformations can be very fortunate unless a very close romantic relationship isn't working, and then I think you will have a big decision to make. It's been a pleasure working with you, Scorpio. Have a great week, and if you've yet to do so, please subscribe to the channel. Welcome, Sagittarius, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the ascendant, sun or the moon. On the screen now is your event chart right at the start of the week, and we can see that the moon is combining with Mars in house 5, which really is going to give you a lot of vibrancy and a lot of enthusiasm as you pitch into this new week. But also Mercury has been in a very tense, even brittle location, particularly last week when it converged on Uranus. If you did feel a little on edge, it wouldn't be a surprise. But as this week begins, Mercury meets up with your ruler Jupiter in your sector of relating. This combination can be super fortunate, particularly if you work in a business environment where you need to build relationships with customers or clients. Your diplomacy, but also your enterprise come together in a really constructive way. On Tuesday, those people skills are emphasized even more as Venus merges with the Sun and creates a GEMINI. Over the next year, there could be some significant developments in terms of relationships for you. Even if you're in a very good relationship now, there can still be new people coming into your orbit who can be really positive for you. But if you are single at the present time and would like to meet someone, this is a very important springboard. By Thursday, the new moon in Gemini also emphasizes your ability to interact well with others, particularly because Venus is so close to the combination of the Sun and the moon. But it's your listening skills that are going to be really key here. And Saturn over the last year has really been urging you to work at understanding the more human, emotional dimension as much as enjoying the bubbly part of your interactions with others. And Saturn does bring a little bit more of a note of caution. It's suggesting that if there are other relationships in your situation where even if you bend over, it seems backwards to please someone, but they're not really listening to how you feel, you may find yourself wanting to assert your boundary, if with diplomacy, but more firmly over the following months. But then, as the week draws to a close, Mars moves out of the part of your situation which has been giving you a lot of extra charisma and self-belief over the last 6 weeks and into a very hard-working one. If you do want to get more active, the energy of Mars in the 6th house is going to give you a lot of encouragement. Your stamina is going to improve. If you want to grapple with something that's more practical, for example, if you are someone who's put off some do-it-yourself tasks or some fitness routines, or perhaps a job maybe that you've needed to search for over this next 6 weeks, you're going to find yourself a great deal more proactive. Have a great week, Sagittarius. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it grow and do so now. Welcome, Capricorn, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart at the start of the week, which does provide some very important pointers. Mercury, the planet of communication, forged a very charismatic connection to Uranus last week, which may have given you some brilliant ideas, but ideas need to be shaped into something more practical and workable. And Mercury's move into your 6th house this week gives you a great opportunity to work on the details. It also links to Jupiter. So if you are looking for a job, your entrepreneurial skills can definitely be enhanced by this week's energies. But it is a match between focusing on the processes but also being able to discuss them, Gemini, and the combination of Jupiter and Mercury is very progressive. So do feel excited if you're changing something up. It could be that you're going to learn new information, Gemini, about what you eat and drink, and also exercise routines can all be refreshed. Now, we have on Tuesday a very special alliance between the Sun and Venus. The 6th house is where we can actually be quite self-sacrificing in terms of other people. And if you do something for someone, even if it's a practical gesture, it can be really appreciated. But that brings us to the new moon on Thursday. This new moon is asking you to make some small but important changes and modifications over the next month, and it may be around your life structure, it could be around your routines, around a job, or it could be around what you eat and drink or the amount of exercise that you get. It's just your ruler Saturn is squaring up to that new moon, and that can create a lot of tension. And if you're feeling that something does need to shift, but you're not quite sure in which way to take it forwards, that tension can be quite palpable. So as much as a lot of people will be commenting on the fact that the new moon is very close to Venus and that creates some luster, which it does, we also need to be realistic. The 6th house is very much about the details. Fortunately, Mars, the planet of passion, really helps you as this week draws to a close, because it moves from your 4th house, where it's been for the last 6 weeks, and perhaps led to your emotions being very up and down and turbulent at times, or perhaps you've been a bit defensive or moody. It moves on Sunday into your sister Earth sign of Taurus, and over the next 6 weeks that's going to help you to feel much freer, but also it's going to do wonders for your self-confidence in terms of your personal appearance and your sex appeal. So even if it is in a very practical location, maybe you're going to start chatting, Gemini, to someone in that ordinary location, and that can lead to something much more charismatic with the help of Mars from this week onwards. It's been a pleasure being with you, Capricorn. Have a great week. All the best and take care for now. Welcome, Aquarius, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now is the event chart right at the start of the week. Now that sees Mercury on the anaretic degree in Taurus, and that means that Mercury is about to move, and that move occurs on Monday into your sister air sign of Gemini. But of course Mercury rules Gemini, but last week Mercury was applying to your modern ruler Uranus, and there may have been some edgy scenes emotionally. Perhaps in your home environment things felt just a little chaotic. Perhaps you had some migraines. But Mercury moving, darting into Gemini is great because it's much more outgoing, and that great sense of humour that Geminis can have is something you're going to feel feeding into your situation. Things can speed up. You can feel literally mercurial. Also, the link with Jupiter gives you enormous charisma, and its link Jupiter back to Pluto exactly on Monday at 120 degrees, which has been building up over the last week, is another opportunity to really feel very motivated and have a lot of conviction and confidence, Jupiter, in what you want to change in your world. Pluto's about transformations, and it may be about your individuality in some ways, some changes to your approaches, but it could also be changes to your personal appearance or your interests, but something's shifting, and it's all really about coming out and being much more charismatic, much more outgoing, and most of all, much more interactive with others. A more playful period is really evolving for you. On Tuesday, there's also a sensational link between Venus and the Sun. This Cazimi can be great if you're in a relationship which has been going well. This could bond you and that person even closer together. If you're single, someone could be coming into your situation over the next 4 weeks, particularly on the back of the new moon in Gemini on Thursday, which is so close to Venus. So your charm, your personality power, your warmth, your affection can all be turned up. But Saturn, your traditional ruler, has got something to say. The 5th house, occupied with the help of Mercury too, from Monday, along with Jupiter, along with Venus, the Sun and the Moon, is also the sector of speculation. But it's also the sector of generosity. And because Saturn's in your 2nd house of everyday money, it's not the best of times to be too free and easy with your resources. Even if someone says, look, there's this fantastic side hustle, as they call it these days, that you absolutely have to go for, but there is some investment, I would be a little bit wary. And by the end of the week, as Mars moves into Taurus, if there are still some things you want to change or modify about where you live, the energy and drive that you're going to have to achieve those things over the following 6 weeks is going to be considerable. But most of all, this is a week which is really urging you to have fun, enjoy yourself, and really engage in the most pleasurable strands of life possible. Have a great week, Aquarius. Take care, good luck, and goodbye. Welcome, Pisces, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 3rd of June for the Ascendant, the Sun, or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. The big takeout is that Neptune, your ruler in your sign, is forging a neat link to Mercury right at the start of the week. If you've got a good idea, Mercury's asking you to express it, but then Mercury dashes into its home sign of Gemini later on Monday. Don't worry, it meets up with your other ruler of Jupiter. This could bring a message, some information to light around a property, home or family matter which can please you. Also, there may be a secret or something you've been keeping very tight to your chest that you've been worried about that you can reveal, and someone may be a lot more receptive to what you say than you believe. By Tuesday, however, the combination of the Sun and Venus, the Cazimi, is terrific if you are thinking about home decoration, buying some new furnishings, modifying your space in some kind of way, or getting into nature in a very immersive manner. If you're someone who really loves water, that's a great opportunity to go for a swim or to just go for a walk and really feel the peace and tranquility of your setting. By Thursday, the new moon is very powerfully linked to Venus as well. And over the following 4 weeks, something can shift in quite a significant way around where you live and your very close alliances. This could be an opportunity to have some kind of reunion. You may find yourself feeling quite wistful and nostalgic in terms of your family history. If you are someone who's interested in genealogy, for example, having Jupiter in your 4th house and Mercury could see you in the mood to prize out some information. But if you aren't particularly settled with where you're living, some kind of change could be in the works. What's not to like? Well, it's just that Saturn in your sign has been teaching you some very, very tough lessons potentially over the last year, asking you to really strip down your existence to what's really essential, and at times it may have felt a little bit of a lonely process, and some people may have gone out of your life. But even though Saturn squares up with the new moon and Venus, what it reminds you really is the people who are still with you, the collective around you, even if it's one or two really reliable, steadfast citizens, those are the people that really count. It isn't always our blood family. Sometimes it can just be people we feel very comfortable or very safe with. It may not even be people that we know enormously well, but there is just that sense of tranquility when we spend time with someone. So look out for that, because the energetic exchange that goes on this week needs to be right for you, because Saturn has been draining at times and you do need to protect yourself. But then as the week draws to a close, Mars powers its way into the sign of Taurus, and for you that's going to see a lot of extra vitality and spark around the way you interact with people, and things can speed up in all sorts of ways in your situation. Don't be surprised if you do a lot of short journeys around your locality right through to the 3rd week of July. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Pisces. Have a great week, and if you've yet to subscribe, please do so now.